Good morning. Look what a beautiful sky. Wow. So today I'm going to be talking again some more about an aspect of the freedom of speech that people have never considered. But first, look at this beautiful sky. Isn't that great? So, anyone who has heard me talk before should know that with embodied language, freedom of speech has a completely different connotation. In America, where I live, where I'm a US citizen, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to have the American freedom of speech. We have the freedom to say what we want to say, as long as it is not inciting violence, as long as it is not breaking any laws, because we have laws that pertain to hate speech or pertain to violence. I'm not exactly all on the up and up on all these different regulations that are there, which are sort of limitations to the freedom of speech. But what I'm saying is that when a person has an opinion which disagrees with some other person's opinion, that person has the freedom to just have his opinion, have her opinion. And there is no government infringement on that individual to express his or her opinion. And as we now have heard the speech of the Vice President Vance in Europe, you've heard him. You've heard what he says, and it's no exaggeration what he says. Yeah? He's not just making things up here. He's not making things up, no. He is saying it as it is. In Europe, in many countries, there is no real freedom of speech, because speech is being patrolled by the authorities in such a way that if you have an opinion which goes against what the government finds acceptable in terms of having an opinion, you can go to prison. So this is a fundamental difference between the freedom of speech that exists here in the United States, where in the Constitution, it is solidified that it's the First Amendment, I believe, that we have the freedom of speech. And so it's enormous. But going back again to my view about the freedom of speech, because the freedom of speech, of course, is great in itself. That we can have different opinions and that we can, work in such a way that our freedoms are not, your freedom is not your freedom is not making my freedom go away. Yeah? So that is truly the freedom that we have. Yeah, that's liberty. Good morning. Oops. Hi. And so I want to talk about embodied language, because when I heard today that there is now this question where Trump is the president, so he's the head of the executive office, yeah, and the executive branch, and so as such he has absolute power because he is the president, and that has many implications for our way of government. And however, although he is the president, and although legally he has that power, because that is the way the American government works, it works that way because of checks and balances. It works that way because of the Constitution. It works that way because of our laws. And these laws, if needed, need to be reinforced. Yeah, they need to be asserted. And that's why Trump is going to the Supreme Court to get the okay to do what he wants to do as the president, which means that he can take care of all these people, all these people who are trying to oppose him, all these people who are trying to slow walk his decisions as a president, all these people also who have positions of power where they are able to do that. And so Trump is doing everything again. His lawyers are doing everything they can to pass, of course, his plans, to pass his executive orders to make America great again. Exactly, And so, but as we all know, this is being opposed vehemently by the left, and the only way in our country to deal with that legally, and Trump is very upfront about that, of course, also, is to fight that in the court. And so, and then we have the court, then we have the legal system, which then determines that this is how it's going to be. So, going back again to the freedom of speech, I want to say something about how then the freedom of speech works, because there's many other cases, of course, having nothing to do with Trump's agenda, but there's many other cases that have reached the Supreme Court and that have led to a decision which has changed the fabric of American society, where a new decision was made, and where people got civil rights, all kinds of things have changed, anti-discrimination laws, etc., etc. There's all sorts of laws that have been passed, things that have happened, due to which a new law was enforced. And so, but what I'm trying to get at here is that ultimately the freedom of speech as we know it, as it has worked, as it has existed, it always, when push comes to shove, yeah, that is a good expression in this case, because it really expresses the force that is involved, the coercion that is involved, it's not, if we are not in agreement on this, if we cannot find common ground on this, there's going to be a law, there's going to be a court decision that's going to force that we have to behave in this or in that way. Otherwise, we are going against the law. Yeah. And so this is the issue of our day. Yeah. This is right now a very hot topic. And so, but as I've said, and I feel I need to repeat it again, this way of governing is always based on the law, is based on the implementation of the law, following the law, and without the respect for the law, without the also the respect for government, there's going to be problems, and there are, of course, all these problems, which also can be expressed as the disrespect for the Constitution, disrespect for the way the courts work, and the way the checks and balances work. And right now, we see how Trump's government has exposed already so much of the wasteful spending and so much of the ridiculousness of all the programs and all the different ways in which money was spent. It's absolutely absurd, and it's astonishing the level of corruption, the level of hypocrisy, and the level of how would I say it? I mean, it's an outrage. It's absolutely an outrage that the American people have been bamboozled in this way. So I want to speak again about the freedom of speech, which is enforced. Yeah. When we are considering embodied language and the freedom of speech which pertains to embodied language, we are not talking about any enforcement of anything on anyone. And that is an entirely different kind of freedom of speech. So the freedom of speech in which nobody enforces anything on anyone. That is what embodied language is about. And as everybody knows this, you will know this, yeah, that even though we call it the freedom of speech, yeah, to have your different opinions, when you are in a situation, let's say a work situation, or in a family situation, or in a, maybe you are in a church, or maybe you are in some club or whatever, people are in all sorts of social engagements, group behavior, and under those circumstances, and I'm just making very broad observation here, certain people dominate the conversation, and regardless of how they manage to do this, yeah, because they can be very friendly, and they can be very knowledgeable, and they can be very holy, they can be very funny, and they can be very brass or very heroic, or, you know, they can be all kinds of things. But they dominate the conversation. They are the ones who are doing all the talking. And regardless of where people are, whether they are whether they're in some club where they, I don't know, play cards or whatever, I mean, regardless of where people are, certain people always dominate the conversation. That's just a given. And those who dominate the conversation, they always shut up others. And the only way to get along with these people is to not push up against them. Because the moment you push up against them, the moment you assert yourself, the moment you confront them, or the moment you oppose them, you enter into the argument and you enter into disembodied language. And so every time people have tried to stop the disembodied language of others with more disembodied language, every time throughout history of mankind, it is undeniable that this is what has happened. And so regardless of our freedom of speech, we have always continued with our disembodied language, and we have never ever continued with our embodied language in such a way that we could say like I do, and that we could agree like I would love to hear other people agreeing with me, not for the sake that they have to agree with me, I make them accept what I say. No, I would love to hear people who say, yeah, it is true. There is a way of talking in which nobody forces anything on anybody. And in which nobody hijacks the conversation. In which nobody is more important than the other. And this has nothing to do with equity. This has nothing to do with diversity. This has nothing to do with all the things. Inclusion has nothing to do with any of the things that we have so far talked about. Because none of that has ever resulted in embodied language. And so look at me, listen to me if you want to. I have embodied language. And we can all have embodied language, and that is the real freedom of speech. Because the freedom of speech as it has been understood with disembodied language is, you could say at best, a preparation for the real freedom of speech, which is this way of talking in which nobody forces anything on anyone. And yes, that requires skill, that requires self-control, that requires a different way of talking, that requires a different way of interacting, that requires a whole new way of viewing ourselves and each other. All of that. And nobody has done that, and therefore everybody is in the dark about that. But I have done that. I have explored that, and therefore I am able to say this. And say this with certainty. I know what this is because I've done it and I'm doing it. So even though people can, because people want to be peaceful with each other, or people want to be friends, or people want to have social contact, people want to belong, want to have some relationships with others, and they don't want to upset these relationships, so they at some point decide that, we say then you gotta know when to pick your battle. But okay, let's say you know how to pick your battle, and maybe only once in a while you sort of stand up for yourself. But for the most part, you don't stand up for yourself. For the most part, you let those people who do the talking. Because, yeah, to oppose them would mean you are arguing, you are fighting, you are getting into some argument, into some disagreement. You can lose your job. You can spoil the relationship. You can spoil the atmosphere. Yeah, all of that. But there's no recourse. There's no recourse against disembodied language, in the sense that whenever one opposes disembodied language, one always has disembodied language as well. And that is also true for me, of course. So the whole notion that we can oppose disembodied language with embodied language, or with some sort of a holiness, or some sort of a, some sort of meditativeness, or whatever we call it, that we are having the moral high ground, that we supposedly know better, that we are the wiser one, that we are above it all, that we are unaffected. All of that is complete nonsense. It was never true. And whenever people have arrogantly, they were hypocritical, they were making it seem as if they were above it, but they were never above it. Nobody was ever above it. It was all just pretentious. It was all make-believe. They were still engaging in disembodied language. Even though maybe they didn't say the bad things, even though but they were certainly doing everything they could to win the struggle for attention, to win, the coercive process, to have the law on their side if needed. This is what lawfare is all about. Lawfare, where one political party is using the court to have their way. And that is what is very apparent in the case of the Trump administration. Trump has been opposed by the left, and the left has done everything to mobilize the law against Trump. It's just unbelievable how the court has been weaponized by the left. And now we still have to deal with all that. We still have to figure out how this has all happened, and how this has really undermined actually the freedom of speech. It has definitely undermined the freedom of speech. And but it is also now becoming clear that if there's not going to be an insistence on the law that guarantees the freedom of speech, if there's not going to be an insistence on the law in terms of getting rid of all these judges, all these attorney generals who have completely betrayed America, betrayed justice in America. If we are not able to get rid of these people, we are going to continue to see this lawfare and the undermining of the very fabric of American society, which has happened due to left-wing politics. And so my bigger bigger argument, if you want to call it that, or my bigger point here is that we really absolutely need not just the law to be on our side, we need our language to be on our side. Yeah? And we only have our language on our side when we have embodied language. And yeah, we can fight each other forever with disembodied language, and that's what we have been doing. But if we do not acknowledge the importance of embodied language, the freedom of speech will forever be undermined by what anyone who has more power, so to speak, can bring up against you and can therefore force on you. And this has happened in the name of ordinary conversation. Yeah? In every realm of society, there are people who force their views on others, who dominate the conversation, who manipulate the conversation, who are able to distract everyone's attention, who are able to throw up a big smoke screen, who are continuously creating havoc, division, and everybody is continuously stirred up by this. Yeah, this also happens, of course, with the media that creates news. Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. Yeah, this is a saying where we get to hear news which is incendiary. Yeah, and it's just amazing how we have not yet acknowledged what is the true freedom of speech. And I'm here to let you know. I know about this. And so I want to repeat one more time the point I have already been making. The point that when we have embodied language, nobody forces anything on anyone. There's no coercion at all. There's just us calmly talking with each other. I'm now going to walk for a little bit. Us calmly talking with each other. Yeah. And then we will say what we are able to say. And then we will take time also to say what we need to say or what we want to say. We will take time. We will take much more time to talk than we currently do. Like right now, it seems like, when you watch these TV programs, they're always in a hurry to get to the next commercials or something like that. It's just so ridiculous how there's always a lack of time with any kind of news reporting, because supposedly we're so much in a rush to report on this and on that. But all of this has to do with the fact that we are continuously involved in disembodied language. And I might as well just say that as well. In disembodied language, we do not listen to ourselves. So we're out of touch with ourselves. Yeah. And another aspect about disembodied language is that it seems like we only are in touch with ourselves if we are maintaining our rank, our status, our importance in the hierarchy in which we are used to communicate. So, yeah, we are only considered to be important speakers if we can make many people listen to us. Yeah, that is another weird concept, but that's how it is. And of course, this is not necessarily true. There are many people who are making other people listen to them, and there are many people listening to these people, and yet these people have nothing to say. And I have this to say, that only a person who listens to himself or herself has embodied language. And such a person never forces anybody to speak in a particular way, because the moment a person like that does that, that very same person is no longer having embodied language. Yeah. So morning.
My dad.
It's a whole group of people still talking with each other, and I'm just walking here with my phone in my hand and talking with myself. But yeah, we can talk like this, how I talk with myself, with each other, and that's something we haven't done. And when that happens, then also silences like these happen. I'm telling you, everything that happens with me while I'm here making this recording, everything that happens in this conversation that I'm having with myself, it will happen while we are talking with each other. And I hope that anyone who hears this is willing to allow that that's possible. Because it is. You just don't know about it, or you don't have much experience about it, because it never happens in a conversation. Maybe it does happen very occasionally, but it doesn't happen because we have embodied language. It doesn't happen because we know that there's a difference between disembodied language and embodied language. It doesn't happen because we know how to continue with our embodied language. No, it doesn't. And it doesn't happen because we know that the freedom of speech is, of course, only possible with embodied language. Freedom. What is freedom? Without embodied language, there is no freedom. So now I feel I've made my point. And I'm not forcing anything on anybody. I just wanted to say this, even though, yeah, it is a beautiful morning. I showed you the beautiful colorful sky, but it is still very cold. And I said to myself, oh, it's not so cold today, but it is still pretty freaking cold. And my hands are freezing. But I'm okay, you know, I won't die. It's just that it's still very cold and I have to get back home. Oh my gosh. Now, I'm gonna leave it here. Just gonna hold my hands for a little bit in my pocket here. Oh my goodness, it is so cold. Change the phone for a second. Put my other hand in my pocket, just warm myself up for a little bit. I also really like it that I can just be like this in my video. I just like to be unconditionally me. When I sniff my nose, you know, and sometimes I don't have a napkin. I know, this is gross, but you know what? Get used to it. Now that is, you know, I believe we should all be unconditionally ourselves, truly. And to me, that does not mean that we are doing bad things or so, you know. I mean, there's nothing bad about me sniffing my nose. Yeah. But there's definitely something bad about the way in which people force things on each other. Yeah. With their speech. And they always do that with their speech. And with their language. And I'm not forcing anything on anybody. As a matter of fact, most people that would listen to this, if there's not many, I know, but it doesn't matter. But anyone who listens to this, you can tell that you could say, he's not going anywhere with it. No, I'm not. Where's it going? Well, it's going where I am. It's going what this is. And if you can grasp this, if you can feel this, then you have listened. Yeah.